The Trexperts Inglorious Live Tour 2023 is concluding in Columbus, Ohio, December 1st through the 3rd. And what great guests will be joining us at GalaxyCon?
The circle closes.
What?
The circle closes.
The circle closes.
Okay.
We started at Columbus last year.
Okay, now we're back. And The Flash, Grant Gustin will be there. Daredevil Charlie Cox, Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman, Jonathan Frakes' buddy, Mike Tyson, the great Bill Shatner.
Will Shatner fight Tyson? That's the question everybody's asking.
Oh, that's the question.
And who would
I'd like
win?
to see that. That would be the ultimate fight club. Forget that the cabaret. That's what they should do at midnight. They should do Tyson versus Shatner.
Wow.
That'd be like Muhammad Ali versus Superman, wouldn't it?
The flying kick alone.
That's an illegal move.
Community's Joel McHale will be there. Breaking Bad's Giancarlo Esposito. Sean Gunn joining the festivities.
Will he be eating a stick of butter?
Maybe he will. That's a deep cut. That's
a
deep cut. That's a specials reference. My God, even I didn't get that at first.
Oh, my.
Terry Farrell and the Now Visitor will be there. Terry Metalis, Todd Stashwick, so many friends of the podcast will be joining.
People named Terry, people named Todd.
Anthony Michael Hall, Jeff Combs. You just heard him on the podcast recently.
And you'll hear him
there
again
as well. And so many other great guests. So you don't want to miss this fantastic GalaxyCon Columbus.
Fantastic.
Coming to Ohio, December 1st through 3rd. Discover the magic of GalaxyCon in Columbus, Ohio this December. And we'll see you there. Hey, this is Mark Altman of Inglorious Trexperts in the 430 Movie. And if you're a fan of our podcast, you don't want to miss Deck 78. Available now by subscribing at TrexpertsPlus.com. This is a bonus podcast full of great discussions about popular culture, film, and television. By your command, here's a sneak peek. So, Dwayne, tell me about how you first discovered Buckaroo Banzai and sort of what was your impetus for falling in love with a movie that's now a genuine cult classic, which basically means it made no money, but it's awesome.
And did you reach it by way of the eighth dimension?
Almost. I found some of my collectibles via a long journey, but I'd heard some of the promotion and excitement about it when the movie was getting ready to be released. I live in Evansville, Indiana, which is a little obscure, so it wasn't in on the initial, release. They staggered the release across about 5 months. I'd seen buzz about it in all the great magazines, Starlog, Fantastic Films. I read all of those. So I was really curious. It looked really cool. There were some convention things, up in Chicago, where they were giving stuff away. And I heard the buzz. Two of the folks who I was really close to, they're a little older, but they were film reviewers locally. So they had gotten the big press packet. So as a lot of folks know, when they were promoting the film, they sent out these big press packets. There was a 100-page production guide, all kinds of information. So they were at a buzz about it. So I actually was out of the town in Louisville and visiting family, and we were in a store, and I found the paperback novel, and it had already triggered. I'd not even seen the movie. That the novel was hard to get. So I picked up 2 copies of the novel, one for me, one for someone else, and then a set of the Viewmaster slides, sight unseen. I hadn't even seen the movie. And unfortunately, the week before Christmas, it aired for 1 week locally. So I went to see it in, I think, 2010. Odyssey 2, so it was a John Lithgow double feature that day.
Right.
Loved it so much. I turned right around, took my dad to see it, and we never went to the movies through the week. So like weeknight, a couple of days later, we went to see it. So that was a very rare occasion that my dad would go on a weeknight.
Now, did you join the fan club at the time? Because that was something really cool that Fox did back then. They had I think it was the Blue Blazer Regulars, where you could subscribe, become a member of the fan club, and they sent you updates and these little push pins, I believe, and the didn't they send also the bandana as well?
Yeah, they definitely sent I didn't get the bandana that way, but they did they had an address in Starlog magazine. You could write off to join the club. They sent you an initial little packet that had 2 stickers and the little fold lapel pin as Team Bonsai, so you could show your support for Buckaroo's team. But they sent you a little packet of information with a production folder, and then there was a set of newsletters that started coming out. They came out for a couple of years. Denise Tathwell, who became Denise Okuda. She was one of the principal organizers of that newsletter, and it was fantastic. It was being pushed by 20th Century Fox when it initially was being released, and it had a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. It had little explanations of things from Richter. It was a lot of love went into it. A lot of little illustrations and drawings, funny jokes, and stuff like that. So I think that really helped build the love for the film, all the, exploring more and more details of it.
So subscribe today at TrexpersPlus.com and don't miss a single episode of Deck 78. Fire the rockets. Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Edward Miller.
And we are the Inglorious
Trexperts. And we had a very animated, or should I say re-animated conversation with Jeffrey Combs at night. You see what I did there? Nightmare Weekend a few weeks back. Great horror convention in Richmond, Virginia. But of course, we took the opportunity, as is our obviously, our Trex podcast is our want, to talk about his amazing roles in Star Trek. Now, I have to say, we have had Jeffrey on the show before, so this is a chance to talk to him a bunch of things we hadn't talked about. Like, I found it really fascinating. I had no idea that they had in development with Stuart Gordon, House of Re-Animator. That was really interesting. Stories about that. I did tell Jeff that I was very happy to purchase, and it's my only Enterprise character I'm purchasing, a Shran from XO6. I made an exception to my TOS and TNG and Deep Space Nine only rule to purchase Shran, and it's a gorgeous figure from the XO6 I don't know what they call themselves, the collection. He's always talking about museum quality replicas. I don't know what that means, but whatever.
Well, it's better than buying a shrunk.
Except on Tuesday.
That's right.
And what are the odds of that?
Exactly.
I've never calculated them.
But I do want a piece of their action. When's Disco McCoy coming out?
Supposedly fairly soon. Quite soon. Quite soon.
Good. I'm excited about that. I get annoyed every time I see those ads and Kirk isn't in the center.
Or even on the poster.
Or on the poster. Yeah, it gets me annoyed.
Yeah, well,
because he is the sun on which all Star Trek orbits. So we had a great time in Richmond. I got to tell you, one of the nice things when I came in, keeping the tradition alive, was there were banana pudding cookies from Richmond waiting for me at the hotel. Now, I don't know if that was because I was an honored guest or a guest of the convention, but they were so good. And then at my last day on Monday, this was interesting. So Monday, Ashley leaves like at the crack of dawn, like 4 a.m, right? So I'm stuck there all day because I'm on a super late flight. So I said, I had such a great time going to Lyndon Baines Johnson Museum. I'll go. Well, of course, I'm in Richmond. I'm going to go to the Edgar Allan Poe Museum. There's only one problem with that. They're closed on Mondays.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, well, you can go to the Civil War Museum. I'm like, I'm not going to the fucking Civil War Museum.
Well, you could have just had him talk to you in Poe's voice.
That's true. I could have. He could have done the whole Nevermore play for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to go to the Civil War Museum where they were going to talk about both sides when there's only one side to that conflict. So wasn't really interested.
You could have gone there with Richard Dreyfuss. He loves the Civil War.
I could have done that. I could have. So anyway, I found this great fried chicken place, which was 2 blocks away, and was really good. But they had the banana pudding cookies.
Wow.
I almost got you. I almost got it for you. But then I figured they wouldn't travel well. Yeah, I hit him on the plane. Exactly.
Yeah, they were traveling in his belly is where they were traveling.
I did. I got 2 of them. I got 2. One I ate at the restaurant. And then I had the other one, which I was bringing back, which I ended up eating on the plane when I got hungry.
Well, they sound great.
They were delicious. But when we go back, I know exactly where we can get them. Because they're made in Richmond.
Going back.
They're made in Richmond. So you're going to love it. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. But Jeffrey's such an interesting guy. I mean, obviously, we know him from his brilliant work in Star Trek, playing, multiple roles, everything from, Inspector
Gadget.
Inspector Gadget. Inspector.
Sorry.
Inspector, Brunt?
Brunt, FCA.
Yeah, and of course, Shran and Enterprise, and playing Wayoon 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And a bunch of other roles. But he's so... He's so great. But then, of course, I first discovered him, and I think many of you did, in Re-Animator.
Sure.
And I love that movie as I think I saw it for the first time, maybe in college, maybe in high school. I don't remember. But I know I had this big poster of Jeffrey Combs, huge 6-foot poster, French Re-Animator poster on the back of my door in college, which was awesome. He had the big green needle.
Yeah.
Yeah. My great regret from Nightmare Weekend is we were seated next to Jeff the entire freaking time. I brought my my Arrow Re-Animator Blu-ray for him to sign. And over the course of the entire convention, I managed to get him to sign it 0 times, including on Monday morning on our way out, because I was with him. It was him and me and Andy Dimoff who were driving to the airport in the transpo, and I still didn't get him to sign it. So it's
you were
just
in the van with him, and you didn't get him to sign it. I remember you left on Sunday saying, "I can't believe I didn't get Jeffrey's autograph. I'll have to get it in Columbus, right?" And then you're in the van with him, and you didn't get it.
I was in the van. It was just one of those things.
That's $80. That's $80.
Yeah.
But
that's maybe next time.
You had much better people in your van than I had. I had the guy from Fulci's Zombie, who's a really lovely guy, but really didn't have much to say. And I'm not a big Fulci fan, so it wasn't that interesting. But you had Andrew Divoff and Combs. Although at 4 a.m, I bet nobody really wanted to talk.
Oh no! Au contraire.
Really?
My friend. Everybody was talking, and Jeff was just telling me even more about his trip to the Poe Museum, Edgar Allan Poe, and all these things. And it was just fascinating. And it's great to listen to him talk. I mean, my other regret for the weekend is on stage, and actually at all, I didn't get to confess to him that I once wrote a single line for him in an episode of DOTA, just so that I could bring him in and listen to him say it. So getting to listen to Jeff just wax rhapsodic about Poe and all of these things was fantastic.
We'll get to do that in Columbus, because he'll be there and at the GalaxyCon, and it'll be good because Darren, he specifically requested that he only wants us interviewing him in the future because he said we were such great interviewers.
Well, that's great.
Which is flattering.
It's amazing how often that happens.
Yeah, go figure, right? I mean, this is not the first time. It's not that other people aren't good interviewers. It's just that,
We're the Trexperts?
Possibly. But it was funny, too, because, of course, he was in Whose Life Is It Anyway with Richard Dreyfuss.
Oh, that's
one
right.
One of his first movies. But we was like, did you go talk to Rick? And it's like, no, he was nervous. It was funny.
Right.
It's like you at home, you're like thinking, oh, it's nervous to meet the stars. Like he was nervous.
They feel the same way. Yeah.
He was afraid. Yeah, it was like, it was funny because you remember when Frakes had just met Mike Tyson?
Yes.
At,
I love you, Riker.
In Austin.
He was like an 11-year-old boy.
Oh my God. He was so excited.
Yeah.
So excited. But Jeffrey was great. And it was great that we got to talk to him about playing Montgomery Clift and Norma Jean and Marilyn, who I don't know why I confused with Tyrone Power for a second during the interview. I'm like, I'm talking about Nightmare Alley. It's like, wait, Montgomery Clift wasn't in Nightmare Alley. It was freaking it was Ty Power. But anyway, it was a long weekend and I was very, very tired. And the other thing we didn't get to talk about, and he's so great. I'm going to mention it now and then we're going to get to the interview. He's so great as the Question in the Justice League animated series.
Yep.
Did you guys watch that?
Yep.
Isn't he
loved
great?
It and loved him. He was perfect.
Oh my God. That show was so good. You know, as much as they messed up all those movies, Justice League, you know, the animated series was phenomenal.
Well, it's just like Star Wars.
And he's just great as the Question. He was so good in those episodes. I mean, all the voice casting was great, but he was particularly awesome in that. We'll have to talk to you one day, Ashley, about casting in animation, casting voices in animation, because, you know, obviously you did such a great job on your show. And, you know, so many of the great animated shows like Batman and the animated series and stuff are really marked by like brilliant voice casting and what goes into that.
Oh yeah. It's definitely its own beast, and it can be very different from casting for camera.
You know who the voice on the Spider-Man 2 game is of Peter Parker?
Yes, it's Yuri Lowenthal.
It is your buddy, Yuri Lowenthal.
Reteaming Yuri Lowenthal and Tony Todd from my show onto the biggest video game ever. You're welcome, America.
You have Ashley to thank.
That's right.
Here.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we also did a couple of panels at Nightmare Weekend that we'll make available on Deck 78 on horror TV shows and the horror movies of 1983. The horror. The horror was the fact that none of us were able to afford anything at the Greg Jean auction. That's the horror.
That's right.
But anyway, well, look, this is a great interview we got with Jeffrey Combs. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So stay tuned after these brief commercial messages, and we'll be back with Jeffrey Combs live from Richmond.
Got a crazy schedule? Having trouble finding time to shop during your busy days? Well, have no fear, cause Crazy Eddie's here with Moonlight Madness. All great Crazy Eddie superstores will be open this Friday from 2 p.m. till midnight with incredible sale prices that'll make you glow in the dark. There's gonna be hourly specials where the prices get lower and lower as the midnight hour approaches. So see Crazy Eddie this Friday till midnight with prices that are... I doubt.
The series. A new reign of terror begins on Friday the 13th. An old antique dealer makes a pact with Satan and seals it with his own death.
And the antiques remain cursed.
Now the curse begins for the three who must retrieve his legacy of evil. Join these unsuspecting victims on a mission into nightmare. Friday the 13th, the series. The terror continues next week.
That's me, taking my third curtain call at the Alhambra Bradford. Sit! They loved me.
Oh, sorry. I thought this was the party.
This is the party.
Oh.
Right. Who's for Atari? What's more, it's my party.
Music hall's dead, sunshine. Pac-Man, Missile Command, Super Breakout, that's where the action is. All linked up, young man?
Just a moment. Right. Anyone for Haunted House?
You have to be fast on your feet for this,
Oh, don't say that. I want to show you who's tap dancing next.
Atari. Simply more fun and games.
Read 'em and weep, boys. Talk about a winning hand. All of my disturbing, revolting brilliance is now available on my Tales from the Crypt trading cards. Scandalous scenes, gory details, the They're all here in deadly color. Collect the complete set. Your friends will just die of envy.
Coming Sunday, April 8th.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.
11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
The Los Angeles Times says Twin Peaks is certainly like nothing else on television.
As W.C. Fields would say, I'd rather be here than Philadelphia.
The Washington Post calls it unprecedented. This you gotta see.
Bobby, did you kill Laura Palmer?
Sunday, April 8th, from David Lynch, Twin Peaks.
Oh, things are spooky tonight here at Nightmare Weekend. I was about to say GalaxyCon.
So spooky.
I'm back. We're back from
Outer space?
From outer space from this morning. Mark A. Altman, showrunner Pandora, writer for Librarians, a bunch of other TV shows. And I'm not even going to mention House of the Dead because it's awful. And the showrunner of DOTA Dragon's Blood and writer of Fringe and Lore and Surrey with the Fringe on top. Ashley Edward Miller.
Hi.
We are so excited. We're so lucky because we've both had the chance to work with this next icon. And we don't use the word loosely because he truly is an icon of film, of stage, of television, remarkable talent, amazing person. You're so lucky to be able to spend the next hour with him, 50 minutes if we're going to be technical. The great Jeffrey Combs.
That's you.
You get that fancy IKEA chair.
I have my own microphone and everything.
So
three waters. We're good.
You must be thrilled to be here at the in the home of Edgar Allan Poe. The museum is here, and obviously everyone knows of your great affinity for Poe and your wonderful one-man play, Nevermore. Can you tell us a little bit about how your obsession with Edgar Allan Poe began?
I wouldn't say it was an obsession. I would just say it was incredible interest in intriguing character that he was. My first memory of Poe was like most Americans in high school. You read. I do remember The Raven, reading that, and also Annabelle Lee. That it was like, poetry, come on, man, I don't want poetry. But he was so incredibly accessible as a poet that it spoke to you, and you got this sense of melancholy and loss and depth to it. And of course, the more I studied Telltale Heart and The Raven, but The Telltale Heart as a story is so well structured. I put it in my one-man show many years later, and it never ceased to amaze me what a piece of incredible building of suspense and release and elevating and the release is just agonizingly beautiful that way. So that was high school. And then you gotta cut way forward in my career. It was probably 15 years ago. I was kind of banging around for something that I could, a historical character that I could portray. And to be honest, I was really kind of trying to get away from anything that had to do with horror. I love history, and so I was like looking around for somebody interesting that I could actually portray. In what form, I had no idea. But I finally came across a biography of Poe, and I started reading it, and I went, my God, this guy is so complex and so brilliant and tragic and soaringly brilliant. And I said to Stuart Gordon, I just read this biography. I don't know why anybody has never done a movie about Poe. He's America's Van Gogh. He's tragic and brilliant. And what's going on with that? And Stuart listened and processed that more than I would have imagined that he would. About a year and a half later, I get an email from Stuart, and he said, I'm doing a Masters of Horror. Masters of Horror.
That's a whole different show.
That's right. It's kind of a reality show.
That's an idea. And I don't know if any of you know, but Masters of Horror was this short-lived, only
Mick Garris.
2 season Mick Garris horror masters of horror directors were given an hour. And if they came to them with a script and it was greenlit by them, you could do your vision. And even then, we're talking like, what, 2007?
Yep.
Yeah, it was like mid-2000s, yeah.
And you could do it on film, which even then was like really sort of starting to fade. This was a real lure for a lot of directors, film, you know. So he said, I want you to play Poe. I did an adaptation of The Black Cat. So go up to Vancouver, because that's where they shot those. And while we were filming, Stuart said, you ought to, I feel like I'm in the presence of Poe here. You should do a one-man show. And I went, like, not only no, but fuck no. I'm too lazy. That's a lot of work. And I'm, no. Well, this is good. Black Cat's good, you know. But circumstances, I remember there was like an economic downturn, 2008, 2009, and I really felt kind of helpless. I hadn't, all of us did. Things went away and you didn't feel like you had any control. And this idea of the one-man show, Stuart gently sort of urging me to do this for a year and a half. And I finally called him and I said, well, what would that be like? What would we do? And we started brainstorming about this. And in short notice, he called and left a message and said, I got us a theater.
Awesome.
And that made it really, really, really real. All of a sudden, and here's when it's available. And I was like, oh. So I called Mick Garris. I just, on a whim, I said, Mick, is that wardrobe still around? Because I'm here to tell you, when I went to Vancouver, they built me from scratch a period wardrobe. It wasn't pulled off of it was built, and it was just great. Fit me like a glove, and I said, is that still around? And he said, boy, you are really fortunate because we didn't get back for a third season. We've sold all the wardrobe to a costume house up here in Vancouver. However, we haven't shipped it yet. So let me go look. And a week later, I get a box, and it has the entire wardrobe in it. Bless you, Mick. And the serendipity of that told me we're kind of lucky here. These are fortunate things. And it was a 4-week run, and it exploded into months, 6 months, 8 months. I'd take it down for a while, go back up and revive it. And people started asking me to do it around the country, New York, Bicentennial at Baltimore, Austin, Texas, San Diego Theater, Nashville. I was film festival in Montreal. I was doing it all over the place, and then COVID hit, and that's the last time I've ever done it. But it's a glorious, beautiful homage to Poe. It's kind of a recital, and it goes wrong because Poe was his own worst enemy, and at one point in the show, I kind of pull out a bottle, and the audience just loves this idea. Oh, the party's beginning, and then it just gets worse and worse, and they're like, God, why is he drinking? This is so bad. This is so bad. So, but redemption at the end. So it's a show that just sort of shows all the tragedy and the beauty and his words, poetry, his stories, his history, what makes him tick, his tragedies. So I'm very, very proud to have had an opportunity to do that. That's a long answer. Thank you.
That's a great answer.
It's fascinating, and I only wish, and has this something been discussed, turning into a film or just filming the performance?
Yeah, don't get me started about that. It's been a lot of high hopes about that, a lot of false starts. We attempted a Kickstarter campaign at the very none of us knew what we were doing, really. It's too much with Kickstarter. It was in its infancy. We made a lot of mistakes, and we were going to make a movie. Stuart said, let's make a movie of it. And it just never, what I learned kind of starkly is, Stuart and I are kind of known for H.P. Lovecraft. If it had been H.P. Lovecraft, there is this pop culture kind of enthusiasm for something like that, especially since Re-Animator and From Beyond and are working on those together. But Poe is revered, but literary.
Right. Sure.
And no one, it just didn't have the same sort of flight options. It couldn't get elevated. And so that's been very frustrating. I would love to have captured it. I still would, but it just seems to be more and more distant in its possibilities.
Were you a fan of the Corman adaptations at all?
Not really. Because I think that they're kind of, really? That's Poe? They seem kind of sending it up. It didn't really correlate with anything Poe. It's almost like capitalizing on a title and a name.
Like they acquired the IP and then they have to exploit it.
It just did. None of it was really particularly, Poe-ish, really. It was kind of parody or didn't correlate with many of the stories. You know what I mean? They were just kind of odd.
So I want to go back to something you said when you started getting into the story, how you were looking for material that wasn't horror. But as the story goes on, the names that come out, first of all, obviously, you land on Poe.
I do, not because he was horror, but because he's just such a captivating.
Absolutely. But Stuart Gordon, Mick Garris, and what it speaks to is this very, long, intimate relationship with not just horror, right, as we sort of understand it here in the context of the convention, but horror in terms of just the darkness, right? The darkness in the stories that we tell and that we consume.
Yes.
And it sounds like, and I guess that's what interests me is why you wanted to get away from that thing. Was it just sort of I want to see other genres for a while, or was there something else to that?
Well, long before I ever did film and television, let's just say, I did a lot of theater with a lot of different genres and a lot of different eras, and from Shakespeare to Moliere to new plays to it was a real versatile mixed bag of my experience in theater. And in fact, when a casting director saw me in a play and said, I'm casting something you might be right for, which turned out to be Re-Animator, you were
right for that, by the
way. yeah, I kind of grabbed onto that one. I embrace that, and I embrace horror. It has its place, but for me, it has its big place. Okay, it can really speak to everything about life, our fears and worries and anxieties. I relish it. But I was looking to break out of stereotypes. Oh, you're that horror guy. Oh, you're that sci-fi guy. It's quixotic. It's futile. But I was looking for something completely different. I wasn't turning my back on any of that, clearly. I embraced it, but I wanted to find more flowers for the bouquet.
But you're in good company, because look at somebody like Anthony Perkins, who was like a matinee idol and things like Friendly Persuasion and all this stuff. And then he plays Norman Bates, and suddenly he's a horror icon, right?
Yes,
but
exactly.
It gave him a chance to direct. It gave him a chance to do other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I am sure that he also at some point went, why can't I do other things as well? You know, the business loves to pigeonhole and stereotype you. You know, if your first big break is in a soap, well, you're a soap actor, aren't you? If your first big break is a sitcom, like you know, you got a series on a sitcom, well, then maybe nobody takes you seriously as a serious actor anymore. And now you have this battle of, but wait. Come on. You know, theater is far more forgiving about that, because they understand that an actor needs to be versatile, and you have an opportunity, because if you're at a theater for a season, that's so kind of variety of plays that you're doing. But once you're known for something in a film or a TV show, you're just identified and stamped. And then I think it makes casting directors' job easy. You know, if we need that, we know where to go. But otherwise, you know, I just don't think they have a whole lot of imagination. So this is I say futile, because it kind of is. This futile attempt. It's silly, probably, but damn it, I was gonna try. That was sort of my idea. But Poe charmed me. As an actor and looking for a character, it's like, I don't care if he's associated with horror or not. This guy has got to be celebrated and explored. I want to. My soul wants to. And he was a poet. You know, he wrote only like 8, 9, like horror stories. Of all the stories that he wrote, so there's a handful. There were all kinds of other things that he did. He considers himself a poet, first and foremost. But we think of The Raven, but we don't think of all the other lovely, romantic, florid, beautiful poems that he also wrote. They're there. It's clear he was a genius.
He got typecast.
We all get typecast, and I guess that's what I was trying to do, is find something that would break that mold. A lot of actors try to do this.
You mentioned yesterday, you reminded us that you had been, with Richard Dreyfuss. The last time you were with Richard Dreyfuss was in Whose Life Is It Anyway?
I was. One of my very early second, third gig was one day on Whose Life Is It Anyway, which was a Broadway play. I think it won the Tony. And they made a movie, and Richard Dreyfuss starred in it. And I think I walked past a set on my day and saw him in there, but my scene was with the great John Cassavetes. And it's just one scene and one day, but we're in the same movie, me in a much lesser role than him, of course, but still.
And you worked with Steve Martin on Man with Two Brains, too. So early in your career, you were kind of working with these legendary figures in film.
Yes, I did. Steve Martin. That was a weird one. I think I was doing a play down at the Taper or something, and my agent called and said, "Get over to Warner Brothers right now." I guess in retrospect, someone may have dropped out or wasn't available suddenly. And so I go to Warner Brothers casting director, I don't remember who, Marion Doherty maybe, and I read, and she goes, go right now. They're shooting, down on Rossmore, south of Melrose. They were in a kind of a lovely big house. And said, you'll go meet the director. And so I got there, and there was a big RV in the in the driveway, and they said, "Yeah, go in there. The director will be out." In walked Carl Reiner. The great Carl Reiner. And they said, "Okay, let's go." You know, it was like on a break between setups or something, you know. So I did my reading, and he goes, "Combs, are you any relation to Earl Combs? The baseball player, played for the Yankees?" I had no fucking idea. I was like, no, I'm not. And he said, "That's okay, kid, you got yourself a job." So he was a big Yankees fan, and as it turns out, Earl Combs is in the Hall of Fame, and he batted between Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, okay? And he was from Kentucky. But I didn't know that at the time.
The scariest part of that story for me is this, because, you know, when you hear somebody tell a story about their agent calling and saying, "You have to get to place X or Y right away."
Right away.
The context we bring to it now is we live in the age of cell phones, when there can be texts, and you can be anywhere. And all I can imagine is, just the terror for me is that you wouldn't have been next to your phone when the phone call came. You know, that you wouldn't have been reachable. I mean...
Yeah. My memory is that I wasn't home, too, but my agent somehow knew how to get a message to me by calling down to the Mark Taper Forum, and someone hands me a slip of paper, "Call your agent." You know, that kind of, but that was the world in those days.
Yeah. Serendipity ruled, yeah, it's true. Or people had beepers.
Now, you know, it's going to buzz in my back pocket and, you know, call me, you know.
Well, I got to ask you another last question about early in your career, but you played Montgomery Clift.
I did.
And I'm wondering how you prepare for a role like that, and you talked about also Poe, for a real-life figure as opposed to when you're preparing to play, say, Shran or Herbert West or someone. What is the preparation different, or is it the same? Because everyone's real in a script, whether they really walk the earth or just a screenwriter's imagination.
I was, my agent called and said, you know, they're casting this HBO series called Norma Jean in Maryland. It was really a clever script about, it was Mira Sorvino and Ashley Judd. And one was playing, Mira Sorvino was playing Marilyn Monroe, and Ashley Judd was playing Norma Jean. And they were kind of the same person, but it was almost like this talking to each other, like the old person, the old self with the new self kind of thing. It's very psychological that way. And they said, you know, you're going to audition for Montgomery Clift. And I went, oh, right. No, I'm not right for that. I'm nothing like Montgomery Clift. I don't look like him. I got a little pug nose. He did not. This is stupid. Agents go, well, you know, go. Just go. Just, you know, whatever. They always say that. You know, you go in there going, I'm just not going to get this. So I kind of looked at the material, I prepared, and I went in. And I said, there's no way in hell I'm going to get this part, okay? So many actors in L.A., they're going to find somebody who looks just like him or pretty close, not me. But I got the part. And I talked to the director later, and he said, well, I'm not looking for somebody who looks, I'm looking for a quality. Just the quality of him. So I had this lovely scene with Mira Sorvino and Montgomery Clift kind of drinking and doing drugs probably at night, shooting The Misfits, you know? And it was a really kind of touching, lovely, like they were real pals, they were friends. And it turned out really well. I watched The Misfits, obviously, and I kind of studied mostly how he carried himself. You know, he had this strange sort of stooped-shouldered kind of walk. And I remember from the movie, and sort of tried to incorporate that a little bit. And I wasn't trying in any way to do an impersonation of him. It's just kind of a quality.
Yeah. That's why you would have been so great in the remake of Nightmare Alley, doing Clift. It just reminds me of that. So one of the obviously turning points in your career, and you mentioned it, is when you got cast in Re-Animator.
Herbert West is at the top of his class in medical school.
How can you teach such dribble? These people are here to learn, and you're closing their minds before they even have a chance. What are
He's brilliant, but a little weird.
I've broken the 6 to 12 minute barrier. I've conquered brain death.
His experiments have always been unorthodox.
It was dead.
But lately, they're getting out of hand. And he's just made a discovery that could wake up the dead.
Herbert West has affected reanimation in dead animal tissue.
What are you thinking? How do you feel?
You? 15 cc's of reagent being administered.
Once you wake up the dead, you've got a real mess on your hands.
Herbert, you're insane! Now what happened? I had to kill him! He's dead?
Not anymore.
Herbert West brought a lot of dead people back to life, and not one of them showed any appreciation. H.P. Lovecraft's classic tale of horror, Re-Animator.
Mr. West. You'll never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
It will scare you to pieces.
Yeah.
And I guess, here we are.
Have you guys seen that?
All these, all these years later, talking about it resonates with a whole new generation of fans. Could you possibly have imagined when you got cast in the film that it would have this enduring appeal?
Not a clue.
Yeah.
Not a clue. What's really strange is that at this, I was doing this play. It was coming to an end. Casting director says, you might be right. Yeah, sure. But I got a call from my agents, kind of go in for this thing. And I meet this bushy-haired guy, Stuart Gordon. Yeah, hi, how are you? I have no idea who H.P. Lovecraft is. But it was like, he said, it's H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. As if I loved his work, but I really didn't, know it. But let me preface that. Once I started reading or more about Lovecraft, I actually did because he permeated pop culture already. He was everywhere. I used to read Eerie magazine when I was a kid, and all of these sort of scary. He's everywhere. I just didn't put it together. And I got a call back, and got the part. But I honestly thought, okay, this movie is a bloody mess. I mean, no one's going to see this movie. But I will get a chance to be on a set. This is a good role. It became an even better role after editing, okay? The original script had a lot more to do with the plight of the lovers. It was all about how this whole thing was affecting them, much more than what's in the movie. Now, a point that they thought so too, because it's there, but it was in the script. There was a lot more scenes between the two of them and what's going to happen. Look at the credits. I'm not first card.
Bruce is, yeah.
I'm last card. And Jeffrey Combs, because their conception. There's the old saying. There's the movie you write, there's the movie you shoot, and there's the movie you edit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's really true. So they really streamlined the story, and I think that Herbert West benefited from that. It was the driving force, and suddenly he's this unstoppable, juggernaut of a character, and a juicy role. I had a great time, and I learned. Too juicy
sometimes.
Huh?
Too juicy sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of juice. Yeah. Juice in a needle. And I just was eating up, learning the technique. Up until then, I'd done a day here and a day there, or maybe a week on one little horror movie. But I didn't have that's what I wanted, experience on a set, and learn this new craft, really learn it instead of, being frustrated. I was just eating it up. I was loving that. And I never would have imagined that it would have exploded like it did, and that I would be here in 2023 talking about it and signing autographs. This is not a concept for me. Who could have?
I'm sorry. I don't know that you said that the movie was streamlined. I don't know the movie was streamlined. I think what the movie found was your performance, right? You always cut around the thing that's working. And what has always struck me about that film, and you in it, and then you do it again in From Beyond, is that you create this character who is simultaneously vulnerable, unhinged, human, dangerous, all of these things. And it's interesting because, there's this self-effacing quality to how you describe it, that you were just looking for the experience, but really you committed to what was in that role and what was on that page, I think, in an incredible way.
I think I also lucked out because the play that I was doing before it, was a character that was somewhat like Herbert West. It was about 3 Vietnam vets in a damaged individuals although it's a comedy, it's called Private Wars, written by a dear friend of mine, and it was on Broadway, and then this was the West Coast premiere, and my character was this uptight sort of rich boy from Long Island who thought he was better than everybody else, pompous, but it was all a facade because really he was a broken individual and scared to death inside. And so to get to Herbert West, I just had to get rid of all of the vulnerability, all of that, and I just had to be balls out, confident. And so it was like the work had already, maybe it's why the casting director said you might be right for this, because I was kind of like already kind of getting there. So there's that. And another interesting thing about it is that at the same time I was being considered for Herbert West, I was offered to play Romeo in a production of Romeo and Juliet.
Which is basically the same role.
Same role, sure. So I think back on that and I go, well, that's range. That's a good range. I'll take that. And I turned down Romeo to do Herbert West.
As Romeo.
Because one was stage. I'd done that. That wasn't my focus at that point. I'd done a lot of theater. I wanted to play Romeo, but this is film, and I wanted to do film.
But if Romeo had been able to bring a decapitated head to Juliet's bedside, maybe you would have considered it.
That's it, right.
Maybe we should have gotten off on that. I don't know.
This began a lifelong friendship with you, with Stuart Gordon.
Yeah.
But another director who you worked with that, you did some incredible work with, and I know it was one of your personal favorites, was The Frighteners, working with Peter Jackson.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yes. An unbelievable experience. One of the most easy and collaborative experiences I've ever had with a director. He was wide open. He had his ideas, but he had an open ear to and eyes to, well, that's a good idea. You know what I mean? It was so generous and not restrictive. And it's a wonder that I got that part, because my agents had pitched me 2-3 months earlier, and they said, no, he's too young. He's too young. And they kept looking and they kept looking, and Peter couldn't find what he was looking for. So like right near the end of the casting process, they said, okay, bring him in. And the real fortunate, this doesn't happen anymore. It's a real shame in this business. I had the great good fortune that the scene that I auditioned for was the scene where I'm interrogating Michael J. Fox. It's very wordy and it's long, and I had a week with the material. We don't do that anymore. A lot of the time, your agent will say, I'm sending you the material and your audition is tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
On Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, well, now on Zoom. Yeah, it's hideous. It's so wrong. That's not how actors prepare. There's no time there, especially with really dense, beautiful material like that. And so I had a week. I had a week to pace in my garage and get something going and feel comfortable enough that I could walk in that room and lay down something. And Peter gave me some really good adjustments, and I was able to manifest those because I knew the material. It's hard to take direction and change something when you're grappling with new stuff. So he saw that I could adjust and take direction, and I got the part ultimately.
And you talk about how Re-Animator benefited from the post-production process, but Frighteners was a little different because, of course, it was a huge studio movie with a top line by a big star at the time, Michael Fox, and that Peter Jackson, even though he had done the brilliant Heavenly Creatures, hadn't yet done Lord of the Rings. So Universal meddled a lot with that picture. Was that something that ultimately, how did you feel about?
You say they meddled?
Meddled.
Meddling kids.
Well, I do know that they wanted Peter to shoot the movie in America. That's what they wanted. And Peter said no, because Peter was loyal to his crew and his production staff, and he knew that if he came to America, he couldn't bring them with him. He couldn't rely on his team anymore, okay? And he would, they were his strength. They were, that was a bond. And Weta, his special effects wing, all of that. And so he went to great lengths shooting material to show them that he could make New Zealand look like America. So if you watch that movie, you're going, where are we? Portland, maybe? Are we in Portland? I think we're in Portland. Or Seattle, somewhere in Seattle, Northwest, something like it feels like that.
Right.
Right, because it's kind of like that. So he had to fight battles to be steadfast and keep the movie where he's comfortable. Right. And bless him for that. So it wasn't like. So he also knew that if he's way down there, less meddling.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was very smart.
And he's absolutely right about that. Because, keep the, he's the cook, he's the chef. You guys, leave me alone.
The further you are from Universal City, the better.
The better off, the more he has control over his vision.
And of course, we'd be remiss to talk about the other gift you got, which was the Star Trek franchise, which of course you made such an impression in a multitude of roles.
Yeah. Sometimes in the same episodes.
Once. I look back sometimes at my career, and I shiver with the serendipity, the happy accidents, the if not for that, nothing kind of notion. What if I hadn't gone to that one audition, and nothing would have blossomed from that. I got one episode of Star Trek. It was a oneer character, never to return. However, my dear friend from my theater days was a series regular, Renee Auberjonois. And Renee was preparing to direct for the first time an episode, a Ferengi episode, and he suggested that I play this character, this new Ferengi adversary for Quark, and they were somewhat resistant because, well, he just worked for us. We can't. And Renee went, well, good actor. He's in makeup. Nobody will ever know. And they acquiesced. They said yes, and that started. And then I recurred. They liked me doing that, and they recurred, and then the great Ira Bear. Then I didn't really know, but has become a good friend of mine, great friend of mine. He came up to me one day and said, you know, we want to bring you back as somebody that where we see your face. That's what he said. And I went, yeah, okay, sure. And, you know, it's Hollywood, right. But they did. And that was Wayoon.
I feel honored. Your psychographic profile is required reading for VOTA field supervisors. I probably know things about you you don't know yourself.
If you're trying to impress me, you can forget it.
What would you say if I offered to make you absolute ruler of the Federation? No president, no Starfleet chief of staff, just you.
I'd say your psychographic profile of me isn't as good as you think.
Just doing my job.
And I was killed. I was killed at the end of that episode. So it was like, okay, great, you know, I did that. He kept his word, and that's really fabulous. But I didn't know they were going, why did we kill this guy? Why did we kill this guy? And they decided, someone said, hey, we can clone him. And I wound up doing, you know, over almost 50 episodes of Star Trek because of these little infinitesimal. You can't even conceive of these things turning into what they turn into. I can't. It's shocking to me.
But there's this whole concept of actors sometimes acting their way onto a show. You not only acted your way onto the show, in a great bit of cinematic historical irony, you reanimated yourself.
That's true. Oh, that's very good.
Thank you.
Yes, I did, actually. I never thought of that. I was reanimated. That's very good.
As you can see, Captain, even after 100 years, the situation still evokes anger on both sides. We will release our prisoners on the following conditions. Immediate withdrawal of all Vulcan military forces. The so-called compromise is to be rescinded, and the Vulcans must concede irrevocable sovereignty of Wayton to Andoria.
And do you feel it was a big advantage that somebody like Ira Stephen Bear, who was the showrunner, was a walking IMDb? So, of course, he was always looking for actors.
Always.
That he loved and respected and knew their work.
Yeah, and his frustration was he had such a library of knowledge of actors from the past that he relished and enjoyed, and he was constantly like bringing these ideas up for actors that could come on the show, and you know the studio heads and they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the library in their head, they don't get it, they don't see the value in this stuff. All they know is, you know, this is the list of people that we pre-approve, you know, and it's just the same people all the time. It's the same, oh, you pre-approve, okay. You know, so he was very imaginative and persistent. And so I'm not the only one that Ira elevated. He's just I'm so grateful for his vision.
I mean, that's why you look at that show and, you know, the recurring, I mean, whether it's Andy Robinson or Frank Langella, Elise Fletcher, I mean, it's extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Brock Peters. I mean, the people that Ira said, get that person. It was just deep and wide.
Yeah. Well, I know you guys have questions, so we should do that because we're rapidly running out of time. So I want to make sure we give you a chance to ask Jeff some questions. And of course, he'll be back signing tomorrow at his booth. So if you miss him tonight, you definitely want to catch him tomorrow. So Go ahead. By the mic, please. Come on
up to the mic.
Step to the mic so we can keep track.
Hi.
Hey. You've played investigators and conspiracy theorists. Do you have an interesting theory about Poe's death?
Good question. I think that Poe was, there's different theories, right? There's like, well, there was an election going on, and in those days, people would round up people that were drunk, and they would have them go vote, and then they would have them go outside and change clothes, and then go back in and vote again, or take them over to another precinct and have them vote there. And a lot of these people were happy to do this because they were plying them with alcohol, drinks, so they were like, okay, sure, it's just the way it kind of was. So there are a couple of theories. I think that maybe he got drunk and they had him do that. He was found not in his own clothes when he was taken to the hospital. He wasn't wearing his clothes. So there's that, right? There's also the one that intrigues me is that he was on his way through Baltimore. He was going north, but the river was up and he couldn't take the ferry. And so he had to turn around and go back into Baltimore, and there were like two guys that may have rolled him, and maybe they beat him and gave him brain damage. So maybe the alcohol, if he was one of these voting people, was poisonous, and there were no regulations about this stuff. Maybe he had some sort of aneurysm. I don't really know. It's just that he lingered in delirium for 2 or 3 days in the hospital and died. We'll never know. We'll never know. But it's tragic. And he was 39. He had a drinking problem, but it was... I just don't know. I know his brother died from cirrhosis of the liver at 25. So I don't have a steadfast idea of it, but something around in there, like he was rolled, mugged, everything stolen from him. I don't think they ever found his suitcase or anything. It's like him and some of his stories, a mystery. And we've got to be careful about, being definitive, because I don't know if we'll ever know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi there. So Dr. Herbert West is such a coarse character, and I wanted to know whether, did that come from the writers or the books beforehand, or did you have any input into how, rough around the edges he was as far as his personality?
I don't see him as rough around the edges. I think of him as just focused on what he's doing, and nothing's going to get in the way. Not a guy that compromises. Some people might call it arrogant, or some people might say really self-confident. There's a difference there. Listen, I think why people are fascinated by him is that he gets to do what we don't. We compromise all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I'm really sorry. Could you forgive me? Or, oh, God, you're right. None of that with Herbert. And we all would love to be that kind of so sure of ourselves and so steadfast that nothing, and so targeted on our goal that nothing is going to take it away. Manipulative, yes. Brilliant, yes. But kind of like a superhero in that, nothing, he does unwavering. A kind of unwavering, uncompromising confidence. And people go, wow, I wish I could be like that. including me. So I sort of played it as if nothing stops this guy. It's not complicated, but I don't think he was rough. I think he was just said it like, we all would like to say it like it is, but we're tactful and we're careful. He didn't care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Herbert, speak to Herbert.
Here's
the doctor is in.
Actually, he's not Herbert. He's
not.
American.
American Psycho, Patrick Bateman.
Oh,
my ex is over there, and I have business cards.
Yeah, he gave me one.
Okay.
He has business cards.
Okay.
Do you like Huey Lewis in the news?
Yes, Huey Lewis in the news.
So yeah, my question is, so I recall that there was a possibility at one point of the fourth Re-Animator movie revolving around Herbert West going to the White House to revive the president, who would have been played by Bruce Greenwood. And I have this, I just like the image of Herbert West in today's political climate, trying to work his way through that whole house of cards. So my question would be, how would you see Herbert functioning in that environment? Would he play all the chaos to his own best interests, or would it be too much for even a powerhouse such as him?
It would not be too much for him. He would figure out a way. Yeah, that was a really interesting, powerful idea of Stewart's House of Re-Animator, i.e. White House. And the premise was that, and this was in the time of, it seems so quaint now, given all the bullshit we have to deal with, had to deal with, that it was Bush and Cheney. And the story was that the vice president had a horrible heart attack, but was being kept on life support. But he couldn't die because he was really the power and not the president. You see what I mean? Like
so it's a documentary.
It's a documentary. So it's kind of like Cheney is really the power and Bush is just sort of the, So Stewart, being the political animal that he was, he really wanted to push that. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? The powers that be, CIA, real power brokers. What are we going to do? We've run out of ideas. He can't be dead. He just can't be dead. Well,
We know a guy.
I know a guy. If we can just find him, right? So they wind up. They wind up finding Dan Kane, and Dan Kane somehow tracks me down, or has them track me down, and brings me in to revive the vice president. That was sort of the idea, right? But it's insane, and so it's insane, but hilarious. And so Herbert pulls the juice out and is able to kind of revive him, but, not quite right. He's a little berserko. He holds a press conference and he seems to be doing well, and then, and it just goes nuts. And something about down in the basement of the White House, Stewart had this idea of there's Kennedy and there's Lincoln, and, they've been kept down there, and let's revive them. And just Stewart going insane. But he was real steadfast, Stewart, in the idea that it had to be Bush and Cheney. It had to be those guys, because I really want to send them, I really want to make a statement. And I kept going, well, Stewart, why can't it just be a president and a vice president? And he was like, no. And a lot of producer or money people were going, well, you're going to split the audience if you are too specific. So, but Stewart, once he had an idea, it was like a pit bull on a leg. He's just not going to let go. So it kind of never got made.
Oh, that's a shame. That would have been great. Okay, this is the last question, because unfortunately we're almost out of time.
What was it like making that old horror movie, Frightmare? What was it like making that?
Are you throwing your voice? Does it sound like this guy was asking as opposed to you?
Frightmare. That was my first horror movie. My God, Frightmare. The idea of Frightmare was based on an old Hollywood story about when John Barrymore died.
Oh, yeah.
That his friends went and stole his body and brought it back to one of their houses and propped him up in the chair, and they had a party with their old pal, right?
Weekend at Bernie's.
Kind of like Weekend at Bernie's, but that
great story.
You know, they did that. So, you know, this one was that the original title, by the way, of Frightmare was The Horror Star. And so in this iteration of Frightmare, it's a bunch of college students who are horror fans, and their idol horror actor, played by Ferdy Mayne, which is probably something akin to, I don't know, Vincent Price sort of guy, who dies, and his body is in a mausoleum, and they decide to go and break into the mausoleum and steal his body and have a banquet with him at the head of the, it's kind of a clever, weird idea. It wasn't very well executed, because then there was this sort of metaphysical, like, seance thing and brought him back to life. It was really, got silly, but it was my first experience in a horror movie. It was kind of a low-rent sort of production company, and they're a little shifty, and so it wasn't like, hey, this is a lot of fun.
The real story was it may be apocryphal. It's in Hollywood Babylon, but it's amazing because they didn't tell, I forget who it was, like John Gilbert or whoever came back. And so he didn't know, he just knew that his friend had died, and he comes into the house, and he's sitting there, and it almost scared him to death.
Yeah, well, they pranked him. Let's not tell him, right? And he came in and went, it's like,
hilarious jokes you play on your friends.
Yeah,
but it's
with
a
the
very
corpses
famous
of other
story.
friends.
So that was Frightmare. And what's really weird about Frightmare is that at some point down the line, Troma purchased it. And then when they put it out on TV, they put my name above the title. It's like I'm just a supporting role in the movie. It's like all of a sudden, Jeffrey Combs in Frightmare. And it's like, whoa, come on, man. You know.
You have success. It's the ultimate testament of success.
I guess.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Kevin Costner. Yeah, in what was the movie where he was cut out of?
The Big Chill.
The Big Chill.
He was the body.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's surreal. It's surreal when you see things like that.
Well, as is your tradition here at GalaxyCon and Nightmare Weekend, there's a giant selfie that they take. So they've asked me to tell you, if you can please come before you dash out to the front of the stage to take a selfie with Jeff and everyone. Thank you, Jeff, for a remarkable conversation as always.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you all for being here.
And not at dinner.
Let's hear it for GalaxyCon. They do a great job.
And don't even try to go out the back door, because they're not going to let you out until the photo is taken. You're trapped.
Welcome back to the Tedium. That was our interview with Jeffrey Combs. Now it's just us, John.
But we're reanimated after all that.
Yeah.
We are. It's great. I really enjoyed talking to him. And I have to admit, I did feel like, well, we did such a great interview with him on the show a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to talk about? And it turns out that there was a ton of stuff to talk about. And he was great. Even if we don't really talk about Star Trek all that much.
But again, that gets back to how, the actors really seem to, forgive the expression, come to life when we give them an opportunity to talk about things that they don't get asked 100,000 times. And we're not asking them about their favorite color.
Right.
And I think that's what really sets these interviews apart.
So what was it like working with Barbara Crampton?
It was great. I think even after the strike is over, we are going to tell them that they cannot talk about Star Trek ever again.
No, I think
Like
so
Fight
too.
Club.
I think this is the new paradigm. I think it's like, do we really need to focus so much on Star Trek the whole time when it's certainly some of the actors we're talking to are so interesting that we want to just really talk to them.
Such an interesting actor needs an interesting interview.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be the inglorious nothing spurts.
Nothing. Yeah, we're the nothing. Nowhere men. But this is great, and we're getting very close to that time of the season where it's time to the holiday specials.
Hunker down.
Yep.
I'm really worried. I those take so much out of us.
Yeah, but they give so much to the listeners. So
much joy. It's true. It's our gift to you. So if you want to replay that gift, maybe somebody who knows something about YouTube and TikTok and stuff will email us and help us out with the, as we grow the podcast.
With our transition to video.
You kids with the YouTube and the TikTok and the MySpace.
The Friendster. Yes, that's right.
We're live on Friendster.
Be my friend.
Godfather. Yes.
Anyway, well, guys, as always, it's a pleasure. And of course, we'll be heading out to Columbus, Ohio for GalaxyCon, December 2nd and 3rd. And it'll be the big three. We'll all be there.
Yes. I believe it's the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We'll be in Columbus, Ohio, at another great GalaxyCon. And they got a fantastic lineup. We hope you'll join us there.
Indeed.
And hear some of these terrific interviews that we'll be doing live. And we got some special surprises planned. So
really special surprises.
And some not so special surprises.
Not just surprises, special surprises.
Wow.
Yeah, it'll be pretty neat.
And
looking more stories about cookies.
Nice.
Well, I hope so. So far, they're 2 for 2 on the cookies. I hope the cookie. I always have the Cookie Monster on stage. Steve Whitmer's there with Kermit, but I'd like to see.
C is for cookie. That's good enough for me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, thanks as always for joining us. A big thanks to Mark Rivera, our sound engineer, Peter Holmstrom for pulling all the great clips that you've enjoyed throughout the broadcast, and you for joining us here on the Trexperts as you do every week, and on our companion podcast Deck 78, which is available to our Trexperts Plus subscribers through Spotify and Apple Podcast by going to TrexpertsPlus.com or the 430 Movie. So until next week, on behalf of Ashley Miller, Darren Docterman, and myself, Mark A. Altman, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course.